we sell most of our properties, believe it or not, sight unseen. And part of it's you got to have really good pictures that, kind of show everything almost as if they're walking through the property. That is super helpful because, when you do get those properties that are tenant occupied, those are the tougher ones to get showings, right? And it's once you get the property sold, arranging one showing isn't typically a huge deal. You're just like, hey, we got to get our final walkthrough done. And, the seller's motivated to get that final walkthrough done because they want to close, So like we have one right now, we're closing Monday that's tenant occupied. And so we've already got it sold. But the buyer, they want to see what they're buying. And we told them we don't have any contingency in the contract, so they have to close. But we did tell them, hey, once we get the earnest money deposited in the contract, we'll let you see the property. So, but the seller's kind of motivated. So if we're trying to get a hold of the tenants and they're not wanting to show it, obviously the seller's going to kind of step in, make sure that happens, because they've kind of got some skin in the game. They're trying to get their check on Monday. But one thing that we realized was that, and it kind of evolved out of those types of situations, was that even properties that are owner occupied or even sometimes vacant, right? It's easier to sell them like that. So a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, how would you sell them sight unseen, right? And it's really just a mindset more than anything. And realizing that like the buyers, they want to make money, right? So they want deals. So as we're feeding these cash buyers deals, whether they're going to buy it for fix and flip, or a rental property, right? And in Jersey, I would suspect you guys probably get a lot of flippers, right? So even if it's tenant occupied, a lot of times that buyer is going to be somebody that's going to buy it with the tenant in there, but their whole game plan is basically close, get the tenant out, and then flip it, right? Whether they have to wait a few months, maybe they can renegotiate with the tenant, give them some incentive to move early, or if it's month to month, they're going to give notice, whatever. And so, that helps a lot, because it can be a huge pain in the butt. And a lot of times your buyers that are like, hey, can I see the property, aren't the ones that want to buy it. So what I would do is, make sure you have really good pictures and market it out. And when they call in, you're just letting them know basically like, look, that's, if I, we don't have access to this one, it's tenant occupied. This is a home run deal. My phone's been ringing off the hook. If it was vacant on lockbox, I already probably would have sold it 3 times this morning. I just got off the phone. Oh, somebody's calling me right now again while I'm talking to you. My phone's going nuts. Nobody's pulled the trigger yet because everybody wants to see it. But, these pictures were taken, last week. I was in the house property myself. It looks exactly like those pictures. If there's any specific things you're worried about, and then build value in it. So you kind of let them know, like, that's why it's such a great deal. The seller, they were kind of stressed out as far as dealing with the tenant. They didn't know how they would set up showings with the tenant, and that's why we were able to get such a home run deal on it. Like, you're going to you're going to do great on this property. But unfortunately, I just can't do showings because it's going to rock the boat too much, and this is just way too good of a deal. So, if you're ready to commit to it, this is an unbelievable deal. I can send you over the contract, and as soon as we get, as soon as you sign the contract and we get earnest money, I'll definitely coordinate, a walkthrough before closing for you. But, we just can't jeopardize the deal by setting up, showings, because it's just going to rock the boat too much with the seller. Because the real buyers, they're going to understand that. They're going to be like, oh, usually, there's always some situation on the seller's side that allows it to be a wholesale deal, right? Because no cash buyer, especially if they own rental property, seller, especially if they own rental property, is just going to want to give away free equity, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of almost helps the buyer like solidify, oh yeah, this really is a good deal. The reason why the seller didn't list it or do something else isn't because it's, a crap property. It's because, they are stressed out and it is occupied and they didn't know how to deal with it. But a lot of times these cash buyers that are buying from wholesalers, they're savvy enough that they're not worried about, dealing with the tenant, getting them out and then flipping the property if there's enough profits there. So it's really just overcoming the objection as far as like seeing it. And so a lot of times you just kind of got to drill down, like, are they one of the buyers that just wants to see it because they're kind of tire kickers or they're thinking about maybe buying it? In which case, they're probably not your buyer anyway. They're probably just going to waste your time. You're going to set up all the showings, possibly rock the boat, and they're not going to want to buy it anyways. So you can solidify it that, like, look, this is a situation. I can get you in It's just that I can't get you in if you're not ready to buy it. You know, I can, you know, it's not a big deal. I can get a final walkthrough and let them know I need my funding partner, you know, to get inside it before we close. But, you know, I'm only going to get one shot. If I call them and then I show it to you, you don't want it, and then the next guy wants it, you know, I'm going to run into problems because now the seller's going to be like, what's going on? And potentially I'm going to lose this deal that has all this equity that you're going to get, you know, and they're going to understand that. They're going to, and then, you know, I'll tell buyers, literally, I'll be like, you know, I would rather just close it myself because I know that honestly, if I do close it, I'm going to make even more money. And so I'm not willing to jeopardize losing this deal so you can see it. You know, if you want it and you're going to commit to it, no problem, I'll get you inside. But, you know, I'm not willing to risk rocking the boat and jeopardizing this whole deal just for showings, right?
Yeah.
And so honestly, it kind of strains your buyers into who's serious and who's not, you know? And if you get somebody that's like, look, I'm willing to buy it, I have to see it first, right? Then I'll just let them know, like, look, if I got no other options, then, you know, then I'll call you back. But honestly, probably it's going to sell today anyways. Like any minute, my phone's blowing off the hook. Not to mention, if it doesn't sell today, I'll probably just close it myself. But, you know, I'll write down your number. I'll put you down as a maybe, you know, pending a walkthrough. I don't think we're going to get to that, but if we are, I'll let you know. And kind of put the ball back in their court. If they're not biting on that, they're probably honestly not going to close, right? So, and if you go through all that and you're like, I don't want to close this, and no one is buying it, then you have the option, right? Then you can go back to the seller, possibly renegotiate it to where it is a no-brainer deal for them or somebody else, or you can take that risk, right? So there is times where, you know, and they're usually the thinner deals, right? Or the deals that need more work involved, where we will make an exception. And we're like, you know what? I've got a few buyers kind of all saw that, and you're like, I don't want to close this, and no one is buying it. Then you have the option, right? Then you can go back to the seller, possibly renegotiate it to where it is a no-brainer deal for them or somebody else, or you can take that risk, right? So there is times where, you know, and they're usually the thinner deals, right? Or the deals that need more work involved, where we will make an exception. And we're like, you know what? I've got a few buyers kind of all saying the same thing, right? So I'll kind of look at that feedback, you know. If I've got nobody willing to take it and I've marketed it well, but I've got, you know, maybe one or two or three people that are like, I really think I want this, Josh. It's just, I got to see it. Number one, there's got to be a good reason. Like if it's a house built in the last 20 years and it's kind of just a paint and carpet type flip, and they're saying they need to see it, and I've got good pictures, I mean, they're probably not legit, right? But if the pictures are kind of so-so, and maybe the project, like it's a full rehab, possibly like it's a real project, that's where sometimes you might have to make the exceptions. And usually what I'll do is I'll say, look, all right, I usually don't do this, but if I've got no other options, the only time I'll do this, but I'll let them know, I'll say, look, all right, I usually don't do this, but I'm willing to make an exception. If you'll sign a contract and deposit earnest money today, I'll put a contingency in the contract that says you get a one-time walkthrough, and if you cancel within 15 minutes of leaving, that you get your earnest money back, right? And that's pretty strong, like, because they are protected. They can cancel and get their earnest money back. But if they're one of those tire kickers, usually they're going to be like, no, I don't want to go. I don't, you know, no thanks. If you can get me a showing, you know, I think I want to buy it. And they're going to sit there and try to sell you on the fact that they want this property, but yet they're not willing to put their money where their mouth is. Because at that point, you're eliminating the risk. You're like, look, and then you can just tell them, well, look, if you're not willing to take, you know, a little bit of time, go to your bank, get a cashier's check, or set up a wire and get it to the title company and sign a contract, then, you know, honestly, it's really hard to take this seriously. And I would rather close it myself and make that much more money. So anyways, I
actually was going to buy the property.
What's that?
I was going to buy the property. It was for me when I first got in contact with the seller. I drove by it. And but I have my money tied up in other projects right now, so I can't really, you know. So then I just decided, I saw how hot that area is up north, that people were just, you know.
Yeah.
I got I mean, that really helped a lot. Like I didn't think about the contingency. Like if they put some money up and then, you know, the final walkthrough, they get the money back. That sounds good.
Now, and that's always my last option. So typically, honestly, I won't even bring that up when I'm first talking to the buyer. But let's say if I send a property out and somebody says that, right, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wait. I'm going to give it a full day, right? See who else calls, because I would hate to do a contingency with somebody, and then in 2 hours, somebody else gets back to their office, sees the email, and they're like, I want this, and they're ready to go, right? Now I'm like, crap, I wish I wouldn't have done the contingency with this guy. This other guy's a done deal type of a thing. So I always first play it off. My script is always the same, and I go over this in depth in Cash Buyer Hack, but it's always the same. Like, my phone's ringing off the hook. This is a great deal. And all that, hopefully that gets them to be like, yeah, I want it. And if it doesn't, maybe they'll call you back before the end of the day and say, hey, is that one still available? I'll take it, right? But if you go through all that and it hasn't sold, then you've got no other options. Then you can call them back and be like, look, here's the deal. I probably would have sold this thing 10 times today, but everybody's saying the same thing. They've got to touch it. So, if you were the first one to say that you wanted it, but you wanted to walk through, so here's what I'll do. If you're ready to go and you definitely want it, and you just need to, affirm to yourself that it is exactly what you think it is. Now, take in mind, I've been in the property and I'm telling you it is, but I'm willing to do the contingency with you. But here's what I got to know you're serious. So I need you to sign a contract and deposit earnest money. I'm going to give you a contingency that says, when I get you in the property, if you call me or text me or email me, you notify me within 15 minutes of leaving that, the property doesn't work for you, then the earnest money will be refundable. At that point, that pretty much is going to hold them, because sometimes it'll be tempting. Like, you'll get somebody and they'll be like, well, I really do want it, but no, I'm not comfortable with that. And let that be the deciding factor. If they're not comfortable with that, then it really, honestly, there's no reason they shouldn't be, right? They're going to sit there and try to convince you why they're a real buyer and they really want it and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, if they're not willing to put up $5,000 because that they can get back if they don't close, usually what that means, they're trying to flip the contract. They're not really the buyer. If they're the real buyer, they're a real fix and flipper or whatever, they're going to be like, okay, cool. What do I have to lose? Half hour and an hour of going to the bank, setting a wire, or getting the cash in your bag? You've taken all objections off the table. And then the second thing is, and this probably goes without saying, you probably already know this, but when you're creating your marketing that you're going to send out to your buyers, really analyze that property as if you are the buyer, right? Even though you're trying to wholesale it, if I'm going to buy this property, how am I going to make my money, right? Am I going to just paint and carpet it? Because, yeah, you could do a new kitchen, but really the kitchen's nice. It doesn't need it. Create that, what you would do, and then frame it when you send it to your buyers in that regards. Now, some buyers you might put, paint and carpet only, and you're going to make a quick $25K. And a buyer might look at that and go, I'm going to redo the whole thing and I'm going to make $50K. Cool, right? They can, if they want to look at it and figure out how they would make even more, let them, right? But if you look at a property and you're like, there's no way you're going to do paint and carpet. I see so many wholesalers make this mistake. They'll look at it and they'll be like, cosmetic flip, easy flip, right? And you look at it and you're like, that's not paint and carpet. That's a 50-year-old house that probably needs, a lot of different things, right? And then you know, and I'm not saying that the one that needs a lot of work that's 50 years old isn't a deal, but frame it properly. Literally frame it exactly what you're saying, why it's a deal. And if it's not a deal to you when you're framing it, then you kind of know, hey, I'm sending out a 50-50 deal. I'm hoping and praying this deal is going to make sense to somebody, right? And at the end of the day, if you really don't believe in the deal and you don't think it's going to sell, then sometimes I'll question, do I even really want to send this out? Because if there's a, 1 in 20% chance that it closes, well, I'm going to lose my buyers by sending this deal out, and I'm going to lose their attention, because I want to train my buyers, right? That when they see a deal from me, they're like, yeah, this is a real deal. Because there's so many wholesalers sending bad deals out. So
exactly.
If it's a deal that you're like, yeah, maybe it's a 5% chance I'm going to close it, you're probably not going to make that much money on it anyways, right? That's a deal where you're like, well, if I do sell it, I'll take whatever I can get, $5,000, whatever, right? So you're throwing a Hail Mary to make a couple bucks, which could potentially hurt you, and you don't sell a deal later that maybe you make $20,000, or you end up having to sell a deal later for $10,000 that you could have made $20,000, right? So it's, keeping your buyers really wanting to look at your emails and confirming. And it's almost like when you put together that marketing material, that they look at it and they almost you're eliminating every single objection that buyer can think of, because you've already went through the deal as a buyer and already thought of all those things. So let's say the house next door sold for, way lower than all the comps. right? But as you're looking at it as a buyer, you're not just going, oh shit, the one next door sold for cheap. I hope they don't see that, right? You notice, oh, it was never listed. Or it was listed, but they didn't have any pictures, and the comment said fixer upper, and it said tenant occupied, and blah blah blah. So now you can address that, and instead of shying away from it, which is what some wholesalers will do, or they'll just put an address and a price and pray. You can actually put that and be like, you will see that the one next door sold way lower than all the comps, but blah blah, right? And you can actually explain it.
And you're being transparent, yeah.
Yep. So anyways, I hope that helps with the one you have that, that's tenant occupied as far as framing it. And also as far as, if you have to get to a contingency, you can go that route, but try to get really good pictures. And I actually have a YouTube video. If you want, DM me or text me, whatever, when we get off this phone call, and remind me, I'll send you the link. And it's actually a video that I did where I had my camera guy go with me to a vacant house. And he really produced it well. So it's really like an instructional video of exactly how to take pictures the way that I'm talking about, so that a buyer can honestly almost feel like they've been to the property. And then of course I'll always tell the buyer too, like, look, go drive it real quick, because that's going to make you feel that much better. But here's the only thing, it might be sold by the time you get there. So if they're like, yeah, okay, I'll probably drive it tonight, I'll let them know. Then my response is like, well, text me before you go, because honestly, I doubt it's still going to be available tonight, right? Because buyers are buying because of greed. They want to make money. So all those little things you're telling them, some buyers some wholesalers might say, why would I tell them, to text me first? Because if they're willing to go, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to pray they call me tonight. Well, no, build more value. Let them know, like, I don't think it's going to be available tonight. So, text me. And then if they text you tonight and they're like, hey, just seeing if that one's still available, I'm going to go drive it. Now you have the opportunity to build more value. You can text back and be like, you know what, it's not. I've got about 3 or 4 buyers that are kind of all that I had the same conversation as with you. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to take it in the next 24 hours. But yeah, go drive it right now, and be the first one.